Good morning. This is part 2, continuation of, and I've been working on the case here, filling in these little hinge dados. I got one done here, and after making a little piece, I glued it in and I use a block plane. I'll show you what that's all about to smooth that off. And then I got some really fantastic news this morning about the inner top. I'm going to share that with you in just a little bit. Oh yeah, and I'm wearing one of my old photo t-shirts, so you won't forget that this is still a photo channel. So let's get on this and I'll show you how I smooth that out. Well, here's a little piece that I glued in, and it's just a simple matter of taking your little block plane and just very slowly and cautiously planing that off smooth. And do the front here. And your plane will let you know when it's flat, because it'll run a lot smoother. So now all I got to do is take some sandpaper I think we're done. This is loose up here. You can tap on veneer and you can tell when it's loose. Hard. See? It's also loose here in this corner. Along here it's solid. Well, here's my big surprise. I have this old piece of walnut I've had for, oh, I don't know, probably 10 years. Just stacked in the corner. I forgot all about it. And the inner top is 17 inches wide. My piece is 17 and a half inches wide, so I can cut it down. And the color, I don't know how well you can see it, but the color pretty closely matches. Maybe a little more red needs to be in there, but I can make that match, and I don't have to worry about cutting this down and filling it in and all that sort of thing. I'll just use this for my inner top. The only challenge I'm going to have is getting this profile so that the top pieces, when you open it up, will fit. They don't interlock, but they fit inside one another. You have a little bead on this one, and then you have the matching on this one. That'll be a little bit of a challenge, and of course the other challenge is, of course, getting the dados for the hinges. You don't find many walnut pieces 17 and a half inches wide, so I bought it for that reason, and now here I'm going to get to use it. Okay, the first thing I got to do is sand this board. Do it with my hearing protection on, and I have a air filtration system underneath there. I'll start with 120, I'll go to 150, 180, and finally 220. I'm going to take it all the way up so this thing is really smooth. The little vibrating sander just doesn't have enough go power. So what I've had to do is to get out my oscillating sander. It's a bigger piece, and if you look closely, you see these white stripes? What that is planer marks. As the board was planed smooth, the outfit that did it, their planer hadn't had real sharp blades, and it chatters a little bit, and so you get these marks. Those have all got to be sanded out, or that'll show really bad when you put finish on it. I'm sanding this now with 80 grit. Instead of 120, I'm going all the way down to 80. That'll really cut all that off. Okay, I got it sanded what looks like smooth. What I'm going to do now is take some mineral spirits and just wipe it on there a light coat. And if there's any ripples in it, this will make it show up. The problem with these heavy-duty oscillating sanders is that they leave little swirls. So now I've got to start sanding with the 120 to get the swirls out. Okay, I've got it down to a 220. Just some tricks and thoughts on sanding. But I always start, in fact I'll show you, just a couple strokes here. I do a figure 8 across the grain. So I do that figure 8 all the way up. Then my next move and last move with this sander is a vibrating sander. Is to sand with the grain. Okay, always your last sand should be with the grain. Even on a vibrating sander, that's important. And then my finishing sand job, I'll take a little block and I'll actually block sand with the grain with my 220. The other thing is, don't start and stop your sander on your workpiece. Always start it. Then when it gets to full cycle, then start sanding. And don't turn it off while it's on the workpiece. I'll show you what it looks like. See how it vibrates and jumps all around? That'll leave marks on your piece. The same thing if you start it on. So you don't want to do that. We got some nice figuring in this piece along in here, as well as a nice cathedral shaped grain. The only thing I don't like is on each side here I got some sapwood. That's not good, but it's going to have to stay. I'll have to color that so that it matches. Otherwise it'll have kind of a dingy gray look. What I got to do now is round the corners. First thing I want to do is clamp it down so it's good and solid. I've got my corners marked, and I'll stay way clear of the line, and then I'll sand down to the line. I'm using a metal blade instead of a wood blade to kind of minimize tear out. So okay, I've got my router bit on here. This is my test piece. These are rollers, and they keep the board tight and flat against the deck of the router. You always want to do it across the grain first, in case there's any tear out on the ends, and then come back and do with the grain. Okay, my friends, this little box of goodies here is what's called a profile sander, and it has different little rubber tips, shapes that you can put on there, and you can sand different profiles, get in the corners, that sort of thing. It's really a handy little device when you've got something that you got to either do by hand or you have something like this to do it with. Well, good morning. I think this is day 4 of working on the Singer cabinet. And so far I got somewhere around 10-11 hours in this project. And what I'm going to do today is to mount the hinges. I finally got it. I got to install 2 more hinges, but 2 on this side. Here's the crack I've been working on, trying to minimize. When I started out, I had a crack here of about 3/8 of an inch, and I've reduced it by 1/4 without changing the size. We're ready to go ahead and install the other 2 hinges. Got my hinges on and ready to go, and it actually closes. And there's my, you have to have a little crack, otherwise it won't close. Edges are even. The crack is less than 1/8 of an inch. I think we got a winner. I'm gonna go take a break. When you've got a cove like this, it's hard to get into with sandpaper. These little sponge rubber sandpapers work real well. You can kind of wad those up and it'll go right down in the groove. Okay, this is the old drawer front, and I'm going to use that. Remember, it was a tilt out drawer. It didn't, it wasn't pull out, it tilted like this. And I want a drawer that pulls out, you know, just a regular drawer. Okay, when cutting a board on a table saw, how high do you want your saw? Well, I think the rule of thumb is you bring it up high enough where these gunnels are just to the top of the board. Well, you can see them better like that. So that's the cutouts in there. That's where the blade, when it cuts, it gives the sawdust place to move to so that it can clean itself out and not bind up on the board. I need a piece 3 3/4 inches wide, so I'm going to cut it now. Move my fence over, set it at 3 3/4, maybe just a hair over, because I want to sand that raw edge. And then of course, always use a pusher, always. All right, let's get to cranking here and cut this piece up. Alright, well, I'm going to continue to work on this board. I'll be turning it up on edge next and sawing it in half. Here's all 4 pieces for the drawer. I'm not going to put it together now. I'm going to wait till I get the drawer front finished before I put it all together. It'll be easier to handle when it's not a drawer, I think. I don't know, I got to think about that a little bit. I might put it together first. I don't know. Hey, you guys vote on it. Let me know in the comments. Should I put the drawer together first before I finish the front, or should I finish the front then put it together? You tell me what you think was the best thing to do. And I'm going to think about it for, well, a couple of minutes here and take a little pop break, Coke break. Okay, I'm ready to glue up, and I'm going to pin nail it as I glue. Now, what's a pin nailer? Well, it's a nail gun. It looks like so, and it shoots little pins. Now, this little thing I got in my hand here, that's about 50 pins there. They're what we call 23 gauge. They're wire thin. It's like picture hanging wire. That's how thin it is. It may be even thinner than picture hanging wire. But and what's so amazing about this thing is it'll shoot a pin up to 1 3/8 of an inch long, and it'll shoot it in almost anything, any kind of wood. It'll shoot it into oak. It'll shoot it into walnut, whatever it is. The only time it won't shoot is when you get to a knot, and not so hard that it'll bend the pin. But otherwise, it goes right in. And the neat thing about them is they're so small that you really can't see the head. So it makes a really nice nailer. Now, it doesn't have enough strength on its own in most applications, but it'll certainly hold it till the glue dries up. All right, there's one drawer glued up, and I got a couple clamps on it, so we'll let the glue dry. Well, I found a couple of pieces of walnut here. As you can see, they're already shaped to make a slide and a guide. Now, the guide will be this up part here, and the slide will be this part here. Now, when making slides and guides, you always want to use something as hard as or harder preferably harder than the wood the drawer is made out of, because your wear factor is going to be here. Now I don't think this drawer is going to get a lot of wear, probably won't ever get used, but you know, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. You know, QCP. You know what QCP is? That's you might not know what that is, but back in the day, QCP was a motto for part of our business. It meant quality, consistency, and pride. So, you know, I could make it out of pine, but I'm going to make it out of walnut. Why? QCP, that's why. You're going to do something, do it right. Okay, I got the glides and the guides in on both sides here. And then these pieces that I'm gluing up here, that's the support for the back of them. And then up in front here, you can see down in there, there's a piece of wood that goes down underneath, and that's the support for the front. Now, eventually they'll get glued and fixed to those supports, but I want my drawer in there first before I do that, because what I want to do is I want to taper my drawer just a little bit, or the slides in, so that when my drawer slides back in, it'll tighten up as it goes in, and that'll keep the front then tight, because the front opening here is actually wider than the inside of the drawer. The face of the drawer just barely covers the outside, and if the drawer wiggles back and forth, you may be able to see a crack, and it's going to look uneven and all that good stuff. So as the drawer slides in, I want it to tighten up and be perfectly aligned when it's pushed all the way in. Okay? Alright. Okay, I got my little piece of tape on the end of my drill bit here so that I know how deep I'm going. And I'm going to drill down, and then I got my little pin that I'll put a little glue on and stick in the hole. So let's try it and see how it works. I'm going to put 2 in each one here. Now a little dab of glue. I drill the hole just a little bit deeper so it has room for the glue. Put that on there. Okay, there's the pin right there. The drawer's all pinned. See, can you see the pins there? There's one, and there's the other one. Same thing on the other end. Of course, the little ones I've already showed you at this end. Okay, now I gotta clean my bench off and get the blanket down, because now I'm going to start sanding for the last time. And I don't want anything rough as I turn pieces over, denting and scratching up what I've already sanded. So, clean up time and start the refinishing.